Welcome to today's video then. We are looking at the new possible weapon system that the British Army could be using, or what they could look to use in the future. We've got a second video, so stay to the end. The British Army upgrades to an era of high-tech autonomous warfare. What does this mean for the future of the British Army? Let's get into it.
It's an interesting time to be selecting a new...
Straight away though, I love how it's now a race to replace the SA80 before 2030, when people for a very long time are saying this weapon system needs replacing. While I was serving, and I left 3 years ago, well into my service, like early years, people like it needs to replace this. We had the A1, the A2 and the A3, and now it's a race. Typical
standard rifle for the British Armed Forces. Maybe 10 years ago, at least the options to bring into trial might have been straightforward. Since then, we've got the next generation squad weapon, 6.8 by 51, common cartridge, or the civilian version, 277 Fury. Very intriguing. Kind of a... One of these situations where a military sets a very high bar to see if industry can hit that bar, and then they'll look at whether they adopt it or not. And the requirement is essentially much higher lethality than 5.56 can offer, with a side order of penetrating level, NIJ level 4 body armor at up to 800 meters, which is...
Obviously, war has changed, isn't it? Kit and equipment has changed. The 5.56 was a good ammunition for its time. Obviously, the British Army went from a 7.62 in the SLR down to a 5.56. Now, when that happened, I believe the soldiers weren't actually happened. A lot of veterans I spoke to wanted the SLR. They wanted that lethality as well. The 5.56, it did its job. It would penetrate. We was obviously going up against a lot of enemy without body armor as well. But the world's changed, war has changed. And we need something that can penetrate armour, something that's a bit more lethal. It's going to do damage. That's what the army's there for.
It's extremely ambitious, let's put it that way. And that, I suspect, has thrown a bit of a cat amongst the pigeons for what on earth Britain does next.
And also, companies are going to be like, oh my God, we want this contract. We want this. This is a lot of weapon systems. And we know that the UK government will pay over the odds, because that's what they do.
I was very grateful to be invited to Sig Sauer the other week and acquired our first artifact of the next generation squad weapon program. That's the XM7 rifle and the XM250 machine gun, and this new 6.8 round. So by 51, as in the same case length. It's the 7.62 NATO cartridge that we all know and love from the SLR days, with the bullet, so necked down, and I only have the case because I picked up a fired case that I'd fired. I don't have a complete round yet, but you can see that it's not the same, but derived from the 7.62 NATO cartridge with a smaller diameter bullet that's very long and has a high sectional density. And then there are several different flavors of this. So your body armor requirement is met by a particularly hot, spicy version of the round. You have a general purpose round for normal, higher than 5.56 lethality infantry combat use. And then you have a reduced range round, which is what I was allowed to shoot, which is for training, because this thing's so powerful that the standard danger areas on US Army ranges, won't allow the use of the full power cartridge.
Oh wow, nice. So this is something that could be pretty lethal and could be very good, and exactly what the British Army may need. We need to step it up. We've gone down in numbers, we've gone down in kit and equipment, but we still need to have that lethality. We still need to have that force, force to be reckoned with. Right? Let's be that British Army that everyone used to be afraid of. We can't do it with numbers because we don't do that. Can we do it with kit and equipment? So at least when we go into a battle, you engage an enemy with the weapon system, they're like, oh shit, I want to get my head down. I don't want to get involved in this. And it's interesting to know that it is that powerful that you can't use it on American ranges. I wonder if that'd be the same when you come across to the UK as well. Very interested. I did not know that. Sounds unreal though.
If you're going to drag the slider all the way up to 80,000 pounds per square inch chamber pressure to get 3,000 feet per second muzzle velocity, which is, it's the muzzle velocity of a 5.56 out of a 20-inch barrel out of a much shorter barrel and a much bigger, heavier bullet, but traveling at the same speed. So you're absolutely squeezing, you're rinsing every last bit of performance out of the technology that is available.
Nice.
So there's 7.62 NATO, and there is
Yeah, very, very similar. Slightly shorter cartridge and then a thinner bullet.
6.5 Creedmoor. So quite similar in a way to the 6.8, but nowhere near the very high chamber pressures. It's another slimmer, longer bullet, trying to get a flatter trajectory, precision, but also good terminal effect at distance.
And obviously precision is key. It's all good having a GPMG, general purpose machine gun, Spire 7.62, an area sort of weapon, okay? Engage multiple targets, vehicles. You want a rifleman to be able to, behind his weapon, looking down the sight, try and hit that target, first round hit if possible, okay? And, hitting the target where he needs to hit. You don't want to be firing multiple rounds before you hit the target and wasting ammunition. We need to hit that target first time.
So that's kind of come in parallel to the British take on NATO standardization, because as I understand it, 6.5 Creedmoor is what the L129A2 sharpshooter rifle is going to be chambered for. We don't have that yet. We do have original flavor from
interesting.
2009-ish when this was being trialed.
Sharpshooter, absolute brilliant weapon system. When I first fired it, I did find it quite hard at first, but once you get the hang of it, a really, really good rifle. Really nice to fire and just looks unreal.
L129A1 in 7.62 NATO. It's a big, heavy, chunky weapon, although it's relatively short barreled for a precision weapon. And one of the key things here, and this will inform Greyburn significantly once they, if they settle on a caliber, the next step is essentially what form factor are you going for? Now that's stuff like, although you don't really specify for this, but conventional layout versus bullpup layout like SA80, but more importantly, how big and therefore how heavy is the receiver, is the action. So this is loosely AR-10 or SR-25. They're the two sort of standards. The big brother of the AR-15. So that means almost essentially 20-round magazines. You could put a 30-round mag on this thing, give it select fire capability, and run it as an infantry rifle. UKSF did operate, or does in fact operate, I believe, the HK417 as the L2A1 rifle in different barrel lengths, including a 12-inch barrel, essentially operating it as a full power assault rifle or a battle rifle, if you prefer that terminology.
Go on the SF.
So that can be done. But they don't run, I don't believe they run 30-round mags, so you're losing.
Yeah, SF won't, and they also have a much larger armory and budget. The issue is we're going to be confined to some form of budget. It's going to be a pain in the arse. So they're going to change cartridges, and ammunition types, but we're also going to be very restricted on what they actually purchase. This is the issue. There's only going to be limited amount of weapons and limited variety. We're not going to be able to get all these different weapons with different barrel lengths like SF do. We're going on this task and let's take that weapon. Our armory's not going to be like that. There's just going to be set weapons and a set amount.
10 rounds capacity, 10 rounds less that you can shoot at the enemy per magazine. The weight of the round is significantly more. Now, the change from 7.62 to 6.5 Creedmoor for this platform makes sense.
I wonder how easy that is.
Because they've already got the big frame, the big heavy gun. And if anything, you're going to get slightly lighter ammo out of 6.5 over 7.62. 5.56 is a very small diameter bullet. It relies on sufficient velocity to do damage on the order of something like 7.62, if I can put it that way. So it needs to, that's why you have that 20-inch barrel on the M16. It's why you have it on SA80. Once you start cutting the barrel length down, which is a very valid requirement, moving through buildings, operating on ships, you name it. Everyone wants short barrels for sort of dynamic work, but the problem is 5.56 wasn't designed for that. So you've then got to either do something to the round, or you've got to replace the round. Now, the advantages of 6.8 SPC and 6.5 Grendel were you could keep your small frame AR-15. This is the night.
That's good then, because talking from experience, going through buildings, trying to climb through windows, mouse traps, getting up and down ladders, over walls, you don't want this big, large, chunky rifle that weighs a ton and has a long barrel. It gets in the way, you knock it, it's just a pain in the arse. Shorter, lighter weapon, shorter barrel, but same precision, same velocity, same lethality is what you need, okay? Especially as an infantryman, you know, even if you're getting in and out of OPs, etc., but, you know, cutting around the urban environment, that's what you want.
Armament, KS-1, as adopted as the L403A1, alternative individual weapon. And you could convert this, if you wanted to one of those cartridges, 6.8 SPC, let's say, because the same magazines can be used, and you can keep your lighter, shorter, smaller weapon, put it that way. You don't have to go for a big, heavy set of receivers. You can use the same basis. This applies to 300 Blackout as well, which has become popular now, but that's more of a niche thing. 6.8 SPC and 6.5 Grendel were possible replacements for 5.56 across the piece. 300 Blackout is a niche application cartridge, so that isn't likely to be in the mix.
Yeah, definitely not going to happen if it's a niche capability.
Thanks.
Very interesting, really enjoyed that. I do wonder what they're going to pick. This guy knows his stuff. Be very, very interested to know. But let's look at the lethality then of the UK and what it is they want to do with an autonomous.
A day after the release of the long-awaited Strategic Defence Review, John Healey boarded a Chinook to meet for himself the men and women who will have to put many of its recommendations into action. After a short flight, he touched down at Warminster Garrison, home to the British Army's Experimentation and Trials Group. The SDR says the Army needs to modernise, restructure and be ready for war.
Well, it's too late. People have been saying this for a long time, but they were wasting money on pointless bits of equipment. I remember when I first joined, there was really cool bits of kit and equipment and laser rangefinders, weapon systems that they were tried in, looking at, and it never come in. And now all of a sudden, you know, Ukraine, Russia's been going on for 3 years now. You've got Israel, Gaza, Iran, Hamas situation going on. Obviously the Middle East, you've still got Syria and that's still all unsettled. China, Taiwan, people have come out saying we're now in a pre-war state. They're now panicking, going, we've sat on our asses for so long. How do we modernise the army? Because all we've done is get rid of kit and equipment and get rid of personnel. Fuck, what do we do?
The army today, SDR mentions 10 times increase in lethality. What does that actually mean in practice?
What does that mean? Because I'd love to know what 10 times increase in lethality would actually mean to them.
We're at the Army Warfare Centre here in Warminster. These are the lads and lasses that are going to help develop and deliver that 10 times lethality. What it really means is being able to see the enemy further, decide how to hit them faster and strike them harder. And it's the combination of the hard metal and the traditional platforms of tanks, artillery, that combined with the innovation of AI and drones that we've seen today, that will allow our British forces in future to do that. And in the Strategic Defence Review we published yesterday, made clear that that's a lesson we can take from Ukraine.
Yeah, and it's too late, but you better get your masters moving because we need to. But what's going to make you better than the rest? What's going to make you better than Russia, China? They've got drones, they've got the tanks, they've got the personnel, they've got the missiles to strike hard. So what's going to make us better than them?
And for those nations that can make that combination for their forces, they will give their troops, their forces, the battlefield edge in future.
While there were no cuts announced in the SDR, the British Army isn't going to dramatically increase in size. That spike in lethality will come in large part from these new bits of tech. John Healey was able to try his hand at piloting an FPV drone and driving one of the Army's remote-controlled UGVs, uncrewed ground vehicles. Tech that's going to become increasingly important as the UK pivots to what the Defence Review calls a state of warfighting readiness.
The Ukrainians have got
Once again, too late. We should have already been at a state of war fighting readiness.
15,000 UGVs on order. That mass is what's required. And how are you going to bring that to bear with our armed forces?
We could do none of this without the big increase in defence spending that we as a government have now committed.
Big increase. Isn't it gone up like 0.25 or something, 0.15? Like, it's not like you've gone up 2% or 1%.
Made that difficult decision to switch money directly out of overseas development aid so we can fund the promise we made at the election to meet 2.5% of spending on defence, not in 2030, but 3 years earlier than that in 2027.
Today,
You're not even going to meet that defence spending now. You wait until 2027. We're in 2025.
The government also announced a tenfold increase in drone production in the UK, with Ukraine set to receive 100,000 drones this financial year. The lessons from that conflict feeding through as the British military transitions to an era of high-tech autonomous warfare. Simon Newton, BFBS Forces News at Warminster Garrison.
And that's the issue. 100,000 drones alone going to the Ukraine. We've seen how many are being used. Absolutely insane. We need to be more lethal. We do need the tech. We've seen how the Ukraine and Russia war has unfolded. But is it now too late? Comment below what your thoughts are. I'd be interested to know what you've got to say about that. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you soon.